Single action, dual action, single action, dual action. Hi guys, Natalie Madison here of Artisan Cakes. Today we're talking about single action and dual action airbrushes and what those differences might mean for you as a cake or cookie artist. Single action airbrushes and dual action airbrushes. You're going to find all of your airbrushes categorized as either one or the other. A single action airbrush controls both the airflow and color flow with one single back pull of the trigger. And a dual action airbrush controls those movements with a down on the trigger and a back on the trigger. So back to single action, basically just pulling the trigger back. That's the only option you have. And it controls the airflow as well as the iris opening for the needle. The dual action controls both by pressing down on the trigger. Can you see that little tiny movement? And on pulling back on the trigger. Pressing down on the trigger is going to allow the air pressure to come through. So basically you are either increasing or decreasing the air pressure or airflow by pressing down. The pulling back motion pulls the needle back into the airbrush, which then by nature opens the iris of the airbrush, controlling your pigment flow. So it could be really fine, tiny line with just a slight pullback, or if you want a more open spray, you're going to pull that trigger back even further. That is the difference in movement or control of pigment using that dual action trigger. In single action airbrushes, there will always be a constant flow of air. It's a continuous bleed, whereas in the dual action, air pressure builds up with the compressor, but it doesn't actually bleed or press air through until you push that trigger down. Constant bleed will always have that airflow. You're going to hear it hissing. So if you're concerned about that hissing noise, that is just constant airflow in the single action, but it doesn't actually add any pigment until you start to pull that trigger back, making the single action a really user-friendly and super easy airbrush to use. More control, again, you would want the dual action, does not continuously bleed. You have to press down to start the air pressure running through that airbrush and then pull back to start the pigment flow. Single action is great for somebody who is just getting started. Dual action is great for people who want just a little more control over both the air flow and the pigment flow.